Arizona Territory, late summer of 1879. The heat still clung to the land even as the sun slid low behind the jagged red cliffs. Dust hung in the air, glowing amber in the fading light, and the road stretched empty in both directions. The wagon rolled slow, its wooden wheels groaning with every turn, the mule pulling it tired but steady. She stepped out from behind a cluster of scrub without a sound. The man on the wagon barely had time to register.
Movement before the revolver was raised,
And pointed straight at his chest. "Step down from the wagon," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried the edge of someone who had already decided what she would do if he refused. "I don't want to shoot you, but I will." The man squinted into the sun, then slowly lifted both hands away from the reins. The mule snorted and stamped once, sensing the tension. "All right," he said evenly. "But if you're going to rob me, you should at least know who you're robbing." She frowned, tightening her grip on the gun. "I don't care what your name is." "You will," he replied, climbing down from the wagon with a calm that unsettled her. "Name's Elias Thorne." Her thumb pulled the hammer back with a sharp click. "Back away." He did, boots crunching against the dry gravel. He kept his hands raised, his posture loose, almost relaxed. His eyes flicked past her once, quick and assessing. "You alone?" he asked. "None of your business." He studied her more closely now. Not the gun, her, the dust-stained skirt, the frayed shawl barely holding together. The way her shoulders were set hard, like someone bracing against a storm with nothing left to lose. "You don't look like a thief," he said. She scowled. "And you talk too much for a man staring down a barrel." He didn't smile. He didn't mock her. He just nodded slightly, as if acknowledging something unspoken. "Whatever you think I've got," he said, "it's not much." She climbed up onto the wagon seat, keeping the revolver trained on him as she reached behind the bench. Her fingers pried open a crate. Flour, dried apples, a small sack of coins. Her jaw tightened. She grabbed everything, stuffing it into her bag with shaking hands. "You forgot one thing," he said. She spun toward him, gun snapping back into place. "What?" He brushed dust from his coat, still unafraid. "Your mistake wasn't taking my supplies." Confusion flickered across her face. "You forgot my last name." She stared at him. "What does that even mean? If you're going to steal my wagon," he said quietly, "you might as well take my name too." Her breath hitched. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "It means," Elias said, stepping closer despite the gun, "that you don't want to rob me. You want help. And I'm offering it." Her knees buckled. The revolver slipped from her fingers and hit the dirt. She slid off the wagon seat and collapsed hard, the strength leaving her all at once. Elias was there in an instant, catching her before her face struck the ground. "I haven't eaten in 2 days, she muttered. "I figured," he said. She tried to push him away, but her arms were weak, useless. "Leave me alone." "I won't." He wrapped his coat around her shoulders, firm and steady. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Julietta James." He nodded once. "All right, Julietta James. Let's get you some water." He lifted her onto the wagon bench, took the reins, and turned the mule east toward his camp. When she woke, the smell of beans and bacon filled the air. Fire crackled nearby. The wagon stood a short distance away, untouched. Elias sat across the fire, stirring a tin pot. "You're safe," he said without looking at her. She pushed herself upright slowly. His coat still covered her shoulders. She shrugged it off and stood. "Why didn't you take me to the sheriff?" "Because you don't belong in a cell. You belong somewhere you can breathe." "You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." "You're hungry. You're desperate. And you're not a killer." Silence stretched between them. "I have 2 children," she whispered. He looked up then. "Prescott?" She nodded. 7 and 5. "A girl and a boy." "Where are they now?" "Left with a woman I trusted. When I came back, they were gone. Sold off for labor." Elias stood and handed her a plate. "You're going to get them back." "How?" "I've got a wagon, horses, and friends from here to Tombstone. You help me run goods through the territory. I help you find your children." She stared at him, stunned. "Why would you do that?" "Because I believe people deserve a second chance. And because you chose grit over begging." She swallowed hard. "You're either the kindest man alive or the dumbest." He smiled faintly. "Maybe both." They rode together the next morning under a pale blue sky. Days passed in quiet rhythm. Camps by creeks. Evenings under cottonwoods. Elias never pushed, never demanded answers. He gave her space, but he never let her feel alone. By the 6th day, they reached a trading post where a boy mentioned 2 children matching her description, sold to a rancher outside town. They rode hard. When Julietta saw her children again, she collapsed to her knees. sobbing into their hair as they clung to her. Elias stood back, watching. That night, with the children asleep in the wagon, Julieta sat by the fire. "You meant what you said," she murmured. "I don't say what I don't mean."
"You forgot something," he said softly.
She looked up. "What?" "When you robbed my wagon, you forgot my last name." Her breath caught. "I want you, Julieta James," he said. "And those children too." Tears filled her eyes. "I will." The first rain came late that year. It did not crash down in anger or tear at the land like a storm long denied. It came slow and steady, soaking into the dry earth as if the ground itself had been waiting. Patient and hopeful, Julieta stood barefoot in the doorway of the cabin, watching the drops slide from the uneven roof and fall into the dust, where they vanished almost instantly. Behind her, the children's voices drifted through the open door. Della was helping Drew practice his numbers on a slate. Elias had traded for weeks earlier, their heads bent close together, serious in the way only children could be, when they felt safe enough to focus on small things. The cabin was still rough. The boards didn't all match. The floor creaked in places, but the roof no longer leaned and the walls stood firm. It held when the wind came hard. That mattered more than how it looked. Elias stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers. The scent of fresh-cut wood clung to him, along with sweat and dust. He paused when he saw Julieta in the doorway, her skirt damp at the hem, her hair loose from its braid. "Roof's holding," he said. She smiled, small but certain. "I knew it would." He crossed the yard and stopped beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They listened to the rain, to the quiet sounds of a life no longer running. Inside, Drew sneezed loudly. Dela shushed him, indignant. Julieta laughed under her breath. Elias watched her, something warm settling in his chest. He had known loneliness before, had lived with it long enough that he thought it permanent. But this felt different. This felt earned. Later that evening, after supper, the four of them sat on the porch wrapped in blankets. The rain had slowed to a mist, the air cool and clean. The children leaned against Julieta, already heavy with sleep. Elias stared out at the land, the fields they had cleared, the fence line still crooked in places, the garden plot waiting for spring. "I was thinking," he said quietly, "when the ground dries, we should plant beans near the south side, corn closer to the well." Julieta nodded. "And tomatoes by the house, so I can see them from the window." He turned toward her. "We'll need wire fencing. I know someone in Patagonia," she said. "Trade's fair," he smiled. "Of course you do." They fell silent again. The lantern behind them cast soft light across the porch boards, the glow steady and warm. When the children finally slept, Julieta stayed awake, staring at the dark fields beyond the reach of the lantern. Elias noticed and shifted closer, not touching her, just near enough to be felt. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked. She took a long breath. "I try not to get ahead of myself." "I do," he admitted. "I picture mornings like this, evenings that don't end in fear, a place that stays." She turned to look at him then. "And you think it will?" He met her gaze without hesitation. "I'll make sure of it." The next months passed in steady work. They repaired the barn fully before winter came. Elias dug a deeper channel from the spring so the water ran clear. Julieta started trading preserves and mended goods with nearby homesteads. Word spread quietly. People came, not because the place was grand, but because it was honest. The children grew stronger. Drew followed Elias everywhere, asking endless questions. Della learned how to care for the hens, proud of the responsibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned orange, Julieta stood beside Elias at the fence line. "I never thought I'd want to stay anywhere," she said. "You don't have to go now," he replied. She shook her head. "It's not that. It's this. What we built." He reached for her hand, rough palm warm against hers. "We're still building." She leaned into him, resting her head against his shoulder. For the first time in years, the future did not feel like something to fear. They were married beneath a cottonwood near the spring. It was simple, a dusty preacher, a few neighbors, the children holding wildflowers they had gathered themselves. Julieta wore a faded blue dress she had mended carefully. Elias wore a clean shirt with new buttons she had sewn on the night before. When asked if they would take each other, neither hesitated. The wind moved through the branches above them, soft and steady. That night, after the lanterns dimmed and the children slept, Julieta stood by the window looking out into the dark. Elias came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "We'll plant more next spring," he said, "and fix the fence by the creek." She smiled and leaned back into him. "We will." They stood like that for a long moment. listening to the quiet of a life no longer broken. No more running, no more hunger, no more fear, just the strength of belonging and the promise of tomorrow. The first rain came late that year, slow and gentle, soaking into the thirsty ground instead of tearing it apart. Giulietta stood barefoot in the doorway of the cabin, watching the drops slide from the roof and darken the dust below. The air smelled clean, like something new beginning. Behind her, Della and Drew sat on the floor with a slate between them, whispering numbers back and forth while they worked. Their voices were calm, safe, a sound Giulietta had once thought she might never hear again. The cabin was still simple. The boards didn't line up perfectly. The door creaked if you didn't lift it just right. But it stood firm. The roof held. The walls didn't shift when the wind came hard. That was enough. Elias stepped out of the barn, wiping his hands on his trousers. He paused when he saw her standing there. Hair loose from its braid, skirt damp at the hem. "Roof's holding," he said. Giulietta nodded. "I knew it would." They stood together in the doorway, watching the rain fall across the land they had worked with their own hands. Fields still rough, fences still crooked, but alive. Later, after supper, they sat on the porch wrapped in blankets. The rain slowed to a mist, and the children leaned against Giulietta, already drifting toward sleep. Elias stared out at the dark fields. "I was thinking we'll plant beans on the south side come spring. Corn closer to the well," she smiled. "And tomatoes near the house. I want to see them from the window. We'll need fencing. I know someone who trades fair." He laughed softly. "Of course you do." When the children were finally asleep, Giulietta stayed awake, staring out into the dark. Elias shifted closer, not touching her, just enough to be felt. "You ever think about what comes next?" he asked. She breathed out slowly. "I try not to." "I do," he said. "I think about mornings that don't start with fear, a place that stays." She turned to him. "And you think this one will?" He met her eyes, steady and sure. "I'll make sure of it." Winter passed without breaking them. They worked every day. Elias repaired the barn fully. Giulietta traded preserves and mended goods with neighbors. The children grew stronger, more confident. Drew followed Elias everywhere, asking endless questions. Della learned how to care for the hens, proud of the responsibility. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky burned gold, Giulietta stood beside Elias at the fence line. "I never thought I'd want to stay anywhere," she said. "You don't have to go now," he replied. She shook her head. "It's not the land, it's what we made here." He took her hand, rough palm warm against hers. "We're still making it." They were married beneath a cottonwood near the spring. No finery, no crowd, just a dusty preacher, a few neighbors, and two children holding wildflowers with serious pride. Giulietta wore a faded blue dress she had carefully mended. Elias wore a clean shirt with new buttons she had sewn herself. When asked if they would take each other, neither hesitated. The wind moved through the branches overhead, soft and steady. Spring came early. The garden took root. The hens laid regular. The fence held. The cabin glowed warm at dusk, its windows lit against the dark. At night, when the lantern burned low and the children slept, Giulietta would rest her head against Elias's shoulder and listen to the quiet. No more running, no more hunger, no more fear. Just the slow, steady strength of a life built one honest day at a time. And if this story of mercy, courage, and second chances moved you, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and stay with us for more powerful Western stories that remind us how lives can change. When someone chooses kindness over cruelty,